Eagle 6 in the twin.
Roger.
Viper 1 bombs away. 1's going to climb high above 20. You're south.
Eagle 6 radar contact. Eagle 6 is visual.
And it goes left.
Well, hello and welcome back to the DCS SITREP, where we discuss news and information about DCS World. It is the premium combat flight simulator for the home PC right now, and it's brought to you by Eagle Dynamics and its third-party affiliates. Once again, I'm your host, Prickly Hedgehog, and to round out the year, Eagle Dynamics delivered one more patch, and a pretty substantial one to bring us up to 2.9.11.4686. One of the first things the team notified us about was their delivery of some more detail to some models that I thought we already had in game. This includes the B1B, the B52H, the S3B and tanker, the SA10, S300 SAM, the M1A2, the M1A2C SEP version 3, the MRAP Max Pro, and the Centurion CRAM. Now, as I've said, some of these we've looked at in the past and have been introduced, but again, the team advised that these got even more details. So a couple of things to note. One, it's free, which is really good. And in the past, there was discussion about these kinds of high-res assets actually becoming payware, downloadable content. That doesn't seem to be the case at this juncture, at least, which is good news. There are some other asset packs that are paid for, such as the World War II assets pack. So good news, at least for now, with regards to that. And the team also advised we're going to get more of these, hopefully in the near future. Now, there were a large number of changes, as you would have guessed, with this large patch, ranging from DCS Core through to updates for the various campaigns, and of course, pretty much all of the modules in the game right now. Let's start with DCS Core, and one of the highlights there was the new spotting dots option, which is replacing the improved spotting dots option that we currently have. The improved spotting dots functionality, which makes spotting dots independent from zoom FOV, will be active all the time now. With the new spotting dot setting, you will be able to set the following: off, to have it off completely; auto, to automatically create dot size calculation based on your monitor or your VR hardware parameters, which is how it worked before; or you can set it to 1 pixel size spotting dots, 2 pixel size spotting dots, and this setting is added to the mission editor as well and can be enforced throughout the mission, which is probably good news for people creating missions and campaigns, or I don't know anything about multiplayer, but regardless, a useful addition. Now, as far as spotting dots for quad views, peripheral render target spotting dot size is forced to size 1 if the dots are on while using quad views. Moving on to a couple of interesting decisions to fix a few things with AI. One was the MQ-1A, RQ-1A Predator, which had a corrupt damage model. That's been fixed. They've also fixed the fact that AI can spot ground and air units through dense fog. They've also adjusted, and this will be good news for those of you who enjoy refueling, KC-135 to maintain 25 degrees angle of bank for every turn. So it'll be consistent, at least for now. Another little update here. AI pilots look left when taking off from the supercarrier. That's been fixed. There were quite a few updates to weapons as well. So a couple of interesting ones here. The SA-2 V750 missile, that has had its G limit reduced from 17 to 6, which is pretty substantial. Similarly, the SA-3 5V27 missile has had its G limit reduced from 16 to 6. They've also decreased the countermeasures level, changed the liquid motor smoke tail to solid fuel, and decreased the size of the motor smoke plume. The SA-5 5V28 missile, slight decrease to the G limit from 12 to 10, slightly decreased in countermeasures level, and decreased the second stage smoke transparency. The KH-25 and 29 missile family, total autopilot and seeker upgrade. The AGM-88, they've adjusted the motor smoke, added parameters of transparency of motor smoke, depends on the temperature and altitude. AIM-9 family smoke transparency tuning has occurred. The C-Dart SAM fuse parameters have been adjusted, and AI interceptors will be able to intercept cruise missiles, which is handy. IR missiles now take into account the transparency and density of fog when calculating the visibility range of a target. The AIM-120, they've changed the coefficient of the guidance system to increase agility to counter high G roll maneuvers. And the IR marker beams visible in daytime for TV displays have been fixed. And last thing here, amidst many other changes, They said here that scripting API changes. There's an experimental fix for server crash after world.remove_junk being used. They're asking hosters to please test it, and they're looking for feedback on that. Let's move to the Viper.
Sooner say again for phaser 3 and 4.
Which received a very large number of updates. A couple of big ones here were the improved HUD limited refresh rate, which has made airspeed, altitude, and acceleration update rates fixed at a set refresh rate. As such, faster rates of change will result in skipped values. The acceleration updates are slightly faster than velocity and acceleration. They've also made some improvement to the specific excess power. This is based on user feedback. The difference in energy lost in the flight model and energy management diagrams of instantaneous turn rates was noted. On the left edge, high angles of attack, AOA greater than 15, and low speeds below Mach 0.7. Excessive energy loss, airspeed loss was confirmed. On the right edge of the energy management diagram, and speeds greater than Mach 0.7 and angles of attack greater or less than 15, there was noticeably insufficient energy loss. So the left edge has been corrected and energy loss has been reduced closer to the reference points. Work on that right edge continues and will be resolved in a later update. So stay tuned if that's something that bothers you in particular. Now, there were, as I said, quite a lot of other changes as well. We won't go through all of these line by line for brevity's sake, but do expect some hands-on controls, function command updates, changes to the DED pages and updates, autopilot updates, revisions, and RWR and CMDS modes as well. So some good news there for F-16 fans, Viper fans. Small update to the F-18, which is, I note, out of early access. A lot of people bring this up as an aircraft, but we know they're going to finish it, and it's been in early access for quite a few years, which is a fair comment. However, it is actually out of early access now, which is good news. One aircraft that is not out of early access yet, unfortunately, and that is the Apache. It is very, like a lot of the helicopters, has a complex flight control system and flight dynamics for calculation in game. So one of the things that they have done is improvement of the flight model and the stability control augmentation system, or the SCAS. Now, they've made an improvement here for the characteristic of the increase in the thrust of the main rotor, which has been refined in the speed range of 0 to 10 meters a second. The helicopter's behavior at the moment of nose tilt to accelerate and when hovering after deceleration will become more realistic. They also did reanimate, which disappeared, the main rotor cone tilt, and they have also done some adjustment to the vortex ring state calculations. So instead of being a fixed point, it's now a little bit more fluid. There's a little bit more variety in it, which will give you a little bit more of a realistic feel. They have also added some visual information to you as you get into that state, so you can visually, get to grips, plus some sounds associated with that, to make it a little bit more easy to manage that whole thing. Remember that with these kinds of games, similar to racing games, it's very difficult to recreate that feel of physics, even if you have a motion sim and haptic. That obviously helps quite a bit, but you don't generally have that sensation of movement, of the aircraft frame changing around you based on vibration, based on friction, that kind of stuff. So it has to be done either through visual references or through some sort of sound to give you that impression that something is happening outside of the helicopter and changing the flight dynamic. So you can change this in the specials tab in game if you want that effect to be more visual, if you like, or more audible to you as you operate the aircraft in different parameters and flight dynamic parameters. So pretty cool thing. Now, while we stick to helicopters, of course, the Chinook also received quite a few updates. They've now added trimmer options. They've got the trimming with the hat on the stick. We have windshield wipers now. The wipers knob park position isn't spring loaded, so that's been corrected. Cyclic position for air starts have been added, or fixed at least. Same with the LCT indicator scale. Ground crew failed to repair engines, which isn't ideal. LCT schedule corrected. IR strobe pattern for multiplayer has been fixed, as well as the ramp visualization. They've also made improvements to the dash with regards to tweaks. Crew animation becomes faster when switching seats, and they are still doing work on the CDU pages, which is to be expected. Of course, it does have quite a lot of MFDs and CDU pages in it. It's a very handy helicopter. While it doesn't have all the weapon stuff, it does have some layers to it. It's coming along nicely. Hopefully, I'd like to still see the proper animations that we were shown with regards to troop movement. So updated soldiers in the game that we can transport around as well and drop off. That's still not as part of the game yet. So we'll see as time goes on whether or not that hopefully will be a 2025 feature. We'll see.
Phaser SITREP, rod 20015, 10,000 hostile.
Phaser 3 locked there, Fox 3. Phaser 3 and 4. Phaser 3, kill bullseye, 12720, 9,000.
Cylon, cold left, bullseye, 05021.
The Super Carrier also received some updates, and it's been fantastic to have the plane directors as part of it now. And they have fixed some things with regards to some of those things that came up post-release of that. So they have fixed the dynamic spawn where you were spawning on top of other players. They have fixed the animation sticking after the client exits. They have fixed waiting for the ATC status message displayed in the campaigns. Apparently the iFlows lights were showing backwards, which obviously isn't ideal. Client doesn't get taxiing permission, so awaiting requested crew member. No directors. The CAT crew only launched the first aircraft. The AI carrier taxiing decreased DT, smooth brake and pilot view corrections. Taxi crew stuck in multiplayer with awaiting crew 1 idle message. Wheel chock won't be placed when teleport to hangar for both the Hornet and the Tomcat. Velocity limit option works if it's turned off. And then the deck crew problems with regards to AI F-14s have been fixed. The AI on the 6-pack can't taxi. They've fixed the yellow shirt director repeats the stop gesture. And they've fixed the director teleports after assigning a player to the next one, apparently teleporting to his initial point, which isn't feasibly possible or physically possible in the real world. So that's good. And frequent change of commands by the director. Stop, come forward when taxiing on the deck. So some good fixes there. There's still a known issue with regards to force option disable the deck crew. It doesn't work. In order to create a mission with the deck crew disabled, you need to disable it in the general options, unfortunately. So hopefully there's a workaround for that.
Relay Ruben 56 Miller time. Sooner Bogey 04, Phaser 1 and 2.
Now, we've talked quite a bit about the F5E3 remastered lately. Really a handy little addition to this popular aircraft. There was quite a bit of discussion about whether or not the cockpit was recreated from scratch. So some interesting videos online about that. Nonetheless, it was well, at least for me, because I already owned the original unit and I had some Sky Miles. It really only cost me about $5, which is not a bad edition, and it is currently on sale. Anyway, what have they done here? Well, they've added animation of shaking elements in the cockpit. They've added wingtip shake at high AOA. They've added lurks vapor trails. They've fixed the RWR button dimmer that doesn't work as expected. They fixed the fact that you couldn't open and close the service hatch panels, which was one of the things they did advertise when it was released. And they have fixed the incorrect theme loading page if another theme is applied. And lastly, here, static aircraft parking lot has been fixed. Moving on to Polychop's Kiowa Warrior, which has been a fantastic addition to the game. Definitely one of my favorite go-to aircraft for tooling around in. They have fixed the crash to desktop when using the VoIP push to talk. They've fixed inputs for joystick inputs for auto start and auto shutdown, radio hats and animations, floodlight, position light and blower switches, WPN, ASC, LMC, ACK and REC switches. They've fixed multi-crew flares and they fixed the multi-crew target points. So good little updates there. The Gazelle from Polychop has also had minigun access limits fixed, and also duplicate hot and missile definitions have been removed. Now the Mirage F1 is one of my favorite aircraft in game just from looks. I love what they've done with this. The neat little cockpit. It's a tidy little aircraft. It's certainly got a neat feel about it, and they've done a fantastic job on it. Certainly I can only comment on the visual aspect of it because I haven't had a lot of time in the seat to get to grips with it and learn it. I've actually kicked around doing sort of more time, but at last, there's only so many hours in a day and so many aircraft, but very, very neat aircraft. So as usual, they break down their updates to systems, which includes things like the automatic firing of the radar-guided missiles is fixed, through to radio, and then down to general. And I think a couple of things worth noting here. They've added several single and quick start Afghanistan missions for both the Mirage F1, CE, EE, and BE variants. They've added Iraq quick start and single missions. They've fixed the texture of the Mirage F1 EE weapons panel integral light, and they've fixed the issue with several weapons appearing rotated 90 degrees on their pylon, something that was also happening with the C101 apparently. So some nice little updates there, and fun to see some quick start and single missions available as well, just to get up and running and have some fun in those new maps. Now, while we talk of maps, of course, we've been showcasing this over the last few weeks, but the South Atlantic got its new texture. So the introduction of the winter textures has occurred, with emphasis on providing ultra high detail around the Falkland Islands, and we now have high detail custom normal maps for the entire Falkland Islands, as well as new normal maps across Argentina and Chile. There's been improvements added for further enhancements to ground vegetation, delivering a more realistic look and feel across the entire map. And note, June is the summer hemisphere's winter, and as the default date for the South Atlantic map is June, therefore the default season is going to be winter, so just something to bear in mind. It's easy to get confused when you jump between different maps. Most of the other maps are, well, all of the other maps are actually in the Northern Hemisphere, so it's only natural that they would be in summer. And then you come down to the Falklands and the mainland, and of course that's the opposite, or should be the opposite. So again, just something to bear in mind. And of course, with this new weather system that we have, absolutely fantastic kinds of scenarios that you can create with the weather. Really beautiful looking scenery. You get the snow. Couple of things I've noted here that we don't quite have yet. We don't have the snow swirling around on the ground, so there's no accumulation, similar to no spray. And that's a separate thing, I guess, that may or may not be able to be recreated in the game. I don't know. It would be cool to see, like we see the dust blowing from rotor wash and propeller wash. One thing I'd love to see is if that could be achieved with snow. I talked to a pilot from Minnesota a few years ago. He was a rescue pilot, and he was talking about one of the challenges of flying in Minnesota in the wintertime if there's snow is as you come down, the snow blows up and it can cause sort of whiteout conditions around the aircraft, so you can lose sight of your landing, and the altitude, it becomes sort of an instrument landing at that point, so it becomes quite a challenge, or can be quite a challenge. So that's something that would be really cool to create in the game. I don't know if it's feasible, but again, something I'd love to see. Moving over to the Kola map now, we are very lucky. They've added a couple of new airfields. So we have Bardufos Airfield and Katila Airfield. My apologies for the butchering of any names there, pronunciations at least. Exciting to have some more airfields in the game. They've added Takan at Andoya Airfield. They've added towns next to the new airfields. And they've also done some enhancement to the terrain visual quality from lowish level and first pass optimization for some blocks. Now, I noticed a slight degradation in performance in VR, so I don't know how this is going to translate. Whether, in other words, what I'm trying to say is whether or not that is caused by any changes to the map, or whether or not it was a system issue or just a general DCS issue, but didn't notice the same thing, I don't think, in South Atlantic. So it's something I'm going to have to monitor closely to see if whether or not it's specific to the map. But either way, it's a lovely map. It's a lot of fun to fly on. And of course, we have the dual campaign, if you like, Arctic Thunder from Baltic and Reflected Simulations right now too. So there's extra incentive to fly on it. This brings us to the end of another DCS SITREP. Lots of things to look forward to in 2025. Remember, we didn't get the MiG-29. We're looking forward to quite a few warbirds, actually. The LA-7, we have the Hellcat, and we also have the Corsair somewhere in the development process, along with the World War II Marianas version of the map. And actually, now that we talk about Marianas, quick apology, that map is in the Southern Hemisphere. I know I did say earlier that all of the maps outside of South Atlantic are in the Northern Hemisphere. That was incorrect. It does include the Marianas as well, so I apologize for that. What a great year. The Phantom introduction, fantastic from Heat Blur, magnificent aircraft, incredible amounts of detail for a very, very clicky old school cockpit, and a lot of algorithm work to create some very interesting things that we haven't seen in the game before. And of course, that includes the updated Jester 2 AI system. Hot on the heels of that, we saw the arrival of the Kiowa, an aircraft that's been in development for many years, to the point that some people thought it would never actually be seen in game. Those guys worked their asses off basically to bring this to us this year, and I think it's been a great introduction. So very, very cool from Polychop. We saw 3 new maps really quickly. Kola, we talked about that already, from Orbix, who are new to DCS World, and they've done a pretty decent job, I must say, of that map. It's looking really good, and of course the improvements, that snippets of which you've seen over the course of this year, have been very much welcome, and we now have, of course, a campaign for it as well through Baltic Dragon, which we mentioned before, and Reflected Simulations. We've seen the Iraq map most recently with new technologies there, really making it pop. We also saw the Afghanistan map as well. That has been a great introduction, and we're looking forward to more expansion of both of those territories. Very interested to see what ED said recently about expanding a little bit more, giving a little bit more detail to these maps, including allowing seaborne operations for Afghanistan, which we initially were told was not going to be possible. So this is very, very exciting. We'll see how that evolves. And then lastly here too, as we talked about, the new weather system, the new volumetric lighting, absolutely fantastic. Really does the game a lot of justice. And I still think it is, as I've always said, the premium combat flight simulator for the home PC right now. While Microsoft has done a great job, I think in part of Microsoft 2024 visually, it doesn't compete, I don't think, personally, with DCS World and what it has achieved for a very, very old gaming system, if you like, or core engine system. What they're able to stretch and eke out of it has been pretty impressive. So we'll see how that continues in 2025. All right, well, that'll do for this week's SITREP. Thanks again. Let me know what you think is going to be in the 2025 video. I expect a lot of images of the MiG-29A. We'll see what other goodies are revealed. It's always an exciting time to see what ED is going to throw at us. And if any of the third-party module makers are going to introduce new products or products that we've been waiting for as well. So stay tuned for that. Cheers. We'll see you next time.
Group hold at 148.8,000 hostile. Major 3, group broad 205 to 9,000 hostile.
Gonna relay some Elvis call for the last fighter on those south.
Reporting. Home shot, bullseye, 18021.
There's a thunder eastbound in the south.
Major eastbound in the south.
Nylon, hot left, bullseye, 160.
Maybe you want me to keep going or take one more swing hot?
Ruben is up.
Shooter, chicken on Ruben. Major hot left.
There's just one more hot left. That's how it wall.
Shooter, we get over the wall. Bullseye, 241 at 40,000 hostile.
Nylon commit.
Shooter, Weasel, Coors, weather. Shooter, 1-1, go to go. Shooter, 3 bullseye. 3, correction, 230, 30, 25,000 hostile. For 30 there.
Yes, sir. Laser pulled out, balance target down.
Laser pull back south.
Balance, group pull back, 50, 30, 30,
Black, group pull back, 36,000 hostile.
Call on 2 lots. Pull back 2, call back 20, 31,000.
Center, Taiwan, 3 on.